Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We're talking about the indictment of former President Trump and the political implication of that. Now, all of you have said this isn't going to happen, but let's just say that former President Trump decides to drop out because of these various legal issues. So, Jim, should President Biden still be the Democrats' nominee, given that 40% of the Democrats polled, and can poll after poll, say they're not really sure they want him to be their nominee?
Well, it's going to depend on who the GOP puts up. By all accounts, right now, I mean, there's a lot of folks in our party that think we need to have someone else. If Mr. Trump is not on the ballot, that may entice a formidable, keyword formidable, able challenger to Joe Biden. But if the Democrats were to do that, if Mr. Trump, let's look at the long-term objective. And as a chairman, we all, those of us in the party, both sides say, in the primary, it's all about putting the best player on the field to score the touchdown in November and to win in November. How do you effectuate that victory in November? What can you do to get through a primary without destroying your chances of winning in November? I would submit that if Mr. Trump, in your scenario, is off the stage and pulling the MAGAs along for the better of the party and whatever they want to spin it, and then the Democrats or someone's tempted to come in and take a shot at the president, it will be impossible, in my opinion, to get the party back together in time. If you've got a unified GOP and they're pulling independents and like similar thinking Democrats, and the party split because of a fractious primary, look at Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy in 1980. We never got over that. I was at the convention in 2008 in Denver when Hillary Clinton, at the day before the nomination, released her delegates and came in positive with Barack Obama. Had it not been for the way they unified and for the way they got it worked out at the last minute, it arguably could have had some trouble. So unless you work it out in the spring, and if you go after an incumbent president, and you can't get it together like we did in 1980, your chances of losing will increase, especially with the numbers you've shared with us.
Well, Flag Day, June 14th, is also the former president's 77th birthday. So he'll be a hefty 82 years old if somehow he would find his way not only to the nomination, but to be reelected president in November of next year. 82 to me disqualifies him. And certainly 86, which would be the number of the sitting president at the end of his second term, is just way too old. I mean, I think your listeners have to understand that there's still a year and 7 months of his first term. And I've told you this in the past. I've met my share of presidents. I've been lucky, but I've never spent more time with any president except for Joe Biden, both in his role as a senator, vice president, and then subsequently as the president of the United States. And I knew what he was cognitively and intellectually years ago. And he's not what he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. He's slow on the uptake. He's not at his best and brightest version of Joe Biden. And he is a formidable force. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but I can tell you he was as able a debater, could talk to three people one time, good on his feet. I see a lot of that diminish now. And I am concerned. And I am also concerned just with the fact that there is literally a year and 7 months left that he has to stare down the toughest and most powerful job in the free world. So for all those reasons, and I've said it 100 times on this program, it's time to pass the torch, both Republicans and Democrats, to move beyond these octogenarians and look for someone that are in more of a prime of life to take on such hefty responsibilities.
You know, I think age is certainly a factor, but it has to be considered with everything else. It has to be considered with your performance, your accomplishments. I mean, you know, we came from a total schism in this country to having a guy who's been in office, in his third year now, and he signed 350 bipartisan pieces of legislation. That's remarkable. No one would have guessed that could even happen. So we have to consider everything. And to some extent, you know, both parties are really at the mercy of what their individual leaders want to do. You know, this call is probably Joe Biden's call. He's earned that. The Republican call is probably Donald Trump's call. And I would say that he earned that there as well.
Take a look.
He needs to hang on to his base.
Take a look at what just happened in the last couple of months. We always talk about what happened back in the 80s when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill made compromises, got a tough piece of bipartisan legislation through the budget and the revenues and all they gave up for the betterment of the institution. That just happened. I mean, it makes you want to be cautiously optimistic, but I'm not sure we're there yet. But look at what Kevin McCarthy did. He went right up against his radical right wing, Marjorie Taylor Greene base, or whatever you want to call them, the MAGA wing, and he did things that they were furious about, but he did them anyway for the betterment of the country. And then you see both, and President Biden got it done. Both sides, when you see both sides taking victory laps on an issue like the debt ceiling or what they did, that's a sign of how it's supposed to work. They both gave and got like it's supposed to work, and I haven't seen something like that happen for many, many years.
Well, the facts are the facts. I can't disagree with you, Jim. I can't disagree with your other Democratic colleague. The fact is they've passed 350 pieces of bipartisan legislation in the first 2 years and whatever, 8 months or whatever the sake is, almost 3 years. Very impressive. But let me tell you what else is also bipartisan. It's bipartisan when I meet both my Democrat and Republican family members, friends, acquaintances, and neighbors who all collectively tell me they don't think the sitting president is running the country. I have a concern with that. They already fundamentally believe somebody else is running the country, and that's a dangerous perception for America.
Well, we've all been staffers, and I think, we've all come up against that. I mean, that, that question, who's really in charge?
Right.
But the truth is, it's the elected official. It's who's the CEO, and the elected official chooses the staff. And if that official surrounds himself or herself with good people, that inures to the credit of that official. And if they don't, they take the blame for the people they've surrounded themselves with. So an administration is really a collective. And I think you have to judge presidents or governors or mayors or senators upon the collective that they've managed to put forward and put in place to run the government.
All right, we have to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute, and we'll follow up on this.